black people wake up and become intellectually independent enough to think for themselves, as other humans are intellectually independent enough to think for themselves, then the black man will think like a black man, and he will feel for other black people. And this new thinking and feeling will cause black people to stick together.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Mental Dialogue Perspective, episode number 9. Got my brother, the God Killer, coming on this thing to join me here. Before we get him on, just want to highlight what we're doing with the Mental Dialogue Perspective, our new format as we are now live on YouTube. Please share this broadcast, as we're basically just giving the Mental Dialogue Perspective on different areas of race, sex, and culture. There's a current issue going around that we're going to highlight today, but now going forward, we don't stick to just one topic, if you will. And so we'll jump through various topics. If you remember the previous format, when we were audio only for 8 years via Blog Talk, we would do a deep dive into a 2-hour topic, if you will. So I do like to kind of set the stage for those who have been longtime viewers to understand that, hey, we can jump around. We'll spend some time on a subject, but maybe not a full 2 hours. We try to keep these shows about an hour long. So just kind of want to set the stage as we pop up now. We try to pop up at the same time as in the past, Saturday mornings, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, but we're not doing it every Saturday. So, hey, we're popping up on you with a topic that we're about to, let's see if I can get my brother the God Killer on this thing. Brother, you with us right now? Okay, yeah, you're coming on right now with me. What's up,
What's going on, man? How you doing, man? Black African Power, brother.
Hey, love to have you back on, as we like to say on this show, black in the saddle with us on the Mental Dialogue Perspective. We've, as you've been encouraging for years, we've transitioned to YouTube and got away from Blog Talk. You the one that, I always give credit. You the one that put me on game. I spent my 8 years over at Blog Talk. We did our thing over there, but now we're over here on YouTube. And so thank you. I think this is the second time we've had you on the Mental Dialogue Perspective. And so if you will, man, any information you want to give before we get into the initial subject matter, I was just explaining to anybody watching, we don't stick to one subject like we used to in the past. For full 2-hour deep dives we used to do on Blog Talk. But thank you for having us. Any information you want?
I just would like to say
we're gonna start playing clips and reacting to those clips.
Yeah, I just want to say, man, big up to the audience, man, tuning in, man. The dialogue over here is serious and very intense, and just is based off of being able to understand the subject and education. Yeah, it's mental dialogue. So these conversations we didn't have for years now. I think we coming up on 15, damn 20 years, right? Close, right?
A lot of dialogues. And
a lot of dialogue. I think we've encouraged each other's growth and development in America. And I think that's important. I just want everybody else to get that same conversation. You know what I'm saying? That same type of thing. So yeah, man, thank you for having me on, man.
No, absolutely, man. Let's go ahead and start with a clip to just kind of set the stage for this morning. Something that's
big up to the pseudo killers and community skeptics, man. And I'm waiting on my man Slim Bay to come on.
Yeah, I would love for Slim Bay to jump on with us. But let's go ahead and get this thing started with this clip right here to kind of start us off.
This is ethnocide because we only have so many publications, and this eclipses us. And listen, they're going to do this to the detriment of their own thing because this is how much it means to them. I just need you to build where you at. That's all. I don't feel like I'm asking a lot. And when you see, remember, she been talking so loud, y'all. This child right here just been having a time just talking. She just talked to hear herself talk. But when the one who climbed the pole that we brought up, Bree Newsom, see, she said, again, you could accurately say that Africans built this country. Africans built the culture, the music, because that's the truth. But that's not what the PSYOP is pushing. The PSYOP wants us to have more fealty to the child. Shut up. She's so stupid. But I brought this up for a reason. I brought this up because I do believe part of the reason, because stupid, and this is just a stupid text. Everything she's been saying is stupid. And I don't know who planned the flagpole thing, but it couldn't have been her. She's not brilliant. So the reason that this can happen to Essence, and the reason that people from the diaspora in various African countries can center themselves, is because as ADOS, we center them. So instead of centering ourselves, we're ADOS, we built the country. Why do you say, somebody asked me that, some little racist man, why do you say y'all built the country? Because the country would not exist without slaves. It would exist without you and your family's contribution. like yes, all of you white ethnics, if you can't draw yourself to the Mayflower and the people who brought us over here because they were awful people, but we still built the country. If you can't trace your lineage to that, then yes, the country would be fine without you. Whatever contribution you made is your contribution, but the country will be fine without you. But my point is that the reason they can center themselves, and you can go to the Essence Festival and see all kind of dashikis and different things, is because our people, whenever possible and however possible, have centered Africa at the expense of our own politics and our own culture.
So you see Yvette Cordell. This is in reference to people finding out the Essence Fest is no longer owned by an African American, but I think somebody of Nigerian descent, as well as some white person owns it overall. And so the Essence Festival, from what I understand, I haven't went into a lot of details on it, but it's taken on a different take because of, I guess, in a sense, who the ownership is. And so it just kind of drove some of the conversation, in addition to what you see with Yvette constantly, if you will, if you know about the ADOS movement, American Descendants of Slavery, which her and Brother Tone, they run that movement. And so in a sense, she takes, at least from my perspective, she takes this situation with Essence to kind of bring out this constant ongoing battle between ADOS and, generally speaking, I would say Pan-Africanists, who in a sense say, hey, we should all be in this fight together. And Yvette is saying, particularly from a political standpoint, and if you know anything about the ADOS movement, it's mostly about gaining reparations. I'm just kind of setting the stage here, and I'll let you jump in, Unc. But in that sense, she's always highlighting that distinction for a specific reason. I'll play another clip from her after this to kind of explain the ADOS movement specifically, but I just thought the Essence Festival was kind of what started the charge of this conversation happening again. And so, Uncle, if you will, just kind of jump in on anything you're hearing there. Again, just kind of setting some context, and we'll let some of the other clips drive our conversation. We see what you got. We got Chill. Okay, I'm gonna go with Chill. All right, Chill, babe. We got our brother Chill on this thing with us. So thank you for being with us, brother. So real quick, if you will, say hello to the audience. Thank you for being with us today. You're in the middle of the show. We jumping right in on clips, and we just basically respond to the clips and just kind of drive the conversation. But Chill, just kind of say who you are, who you with, and then we're gonna go to Uncle, then come back to you.
You got on mute.
Chill, real quick, just to introduce yourself real quick before we let Aunt respond.
Okay.
You might not have
peace, everyone. This is I'm Chill. I'm with the Pseudo Killers. You know, that's just what I do. And we here to represent and do what we do. You know, we're going to address some things, hopefully, and get the conversation going. So, you know, what's up, everyone? Peace.
How you doing, brother, man? Pseudo Killer official. Pseudo Killer official. So yeah, the clip was interesting, and she makes great points about our contributions. I'm not sure if she was saying that. I don't think she said that. She was talking about Europeans. If they wouldn't have been here, we still would have had a country. What was she? Did I get that right?
Okay, yeah. So the reference, he was just kind of making an analogy, because the initial part of the video, in a sense, the young lady was highlighting that Africans actually built this country. It's kind of what the young lady was saying. Okay. Right. And so the reference she made to the Europeans, she was saying that the young lady's analogy saying that Africans built it. She just kind of highlighted that sometimes a white person, racist white person, might come up and say, why do black people say they built the country or whatever? And so she was just highlighting her response to the white person, as always is, because your contribution would make a difference of whether the country is here. Our contribution is brought here as enslaved Africans. Is that she was saying that the analogy, what she thought was weak, was similar to the racist white person saying, why do you say y'all built the country? And she's highlighting that, yes, she always does, the descendant of slavery. You know, she distinguishes herself from Africa, as always, because she leads the ADOS movement. So she's saying this young lady highlighting that Africans built it is not a good analogy.
Oh man, that's great. But
it's kind of what she was trying to say. That's how I took it.
Hey, chill. Is Montoya your screen freezing up to you, or
Yeah, you're going in and out real bad. I think it's you. Let me ask your brother,
Yeah.
chill, stay out.
is it me or him?
Can you? Is he going in and out for you? Because he's going in and out for
Nah,
you.
it looked like it's you. You
It's
keep
you,
freezing
Montoya.
and going in and out. Sometimes your sound go out.
It is you. The artist.
Okay,
can
I'm
hear.
up in the mountains, so it could be me, but I can't hear what you're saying, so it's making it tough.
Don't worry about it. It's you. Trust me. That's why I was asking. Okay, you're in the mountains. So listen, I find it very interesting that we don't know that Africans were brought to America. Okay, so if she's thinking in her mind that Africans, as soon as you hit that water and hit America, you immediately turn to African Americans. That's crazy. You know, these people, you know what I'm saying, that those first few generations, man, they culturally, they was Africans, right? We talking about, we talking about ethnicity at this point. And so those first groups that was built in America, they brought over they contribution. They came from Africa. They was artisans. They were laymen. They were builders, right? All these things, right? Farmers. And so, yeah, they was African farming in another environment. So that's a wild statement for me, right? I can understand why she's fighting it so hard, but I don't know. That's historically incorrect. Well, go ahead.
Yeah, and like I said, I may be interpreting her wrong, but I definitely respect what you're saying.
Right.
Chill, any thoughts to the actual cut, and then we're going to really drive the Pan-African ADOS conversation right after this, if you will. But I just wanted to get a response to that cut. I just wanted to I was really more opening about the fact that I feel like the Essence Festival conversation is what even started these dialogues again via the internet. So I just thought it would be nice to highlight, hey, this conversation we're having today really started with people getting concerned about who was actually ownership of the Essence Festival. So I'm just kind of using that as a little context to start today's conversation.
This is an ongoing discussion within our community. And historically, it has been brought up numerous times, over and over and over again. There just was a conversation with Candace Owens and Nick Fontes. They interviewed her, some situation like that. And he makes a comment about Africa, its development, and African people's intelligence. The clip where she's making these comparisons, she make a lot of valid points, but it's without its proper historical context. And actually what had progressed us forward was a commonality against a political, social, cultural system that said Black people had no value. And so the conflicts that's going on, to me, especially with the Essence, you have a young Nigerian. I can't remember. I think he came over as a child, and or his parents were first generation immigrants, and he moved up and progressed. And Essence was heading towards the same place as Jet Magazine, which would be completely removed from the culture. And he stepped up with some finances and was able to at least preserve some of it. I don't know if y'all know that many of the other Black magazine catalogs have been sold to non-Black entities, which now control the images, the messaging that was in that. And so you have a man who's seen that happening that would disregard our history. And he stepped in, and he happened to be of Nigerian ancestry. I don't understand what the anger is about if you know what happened to the rest of our magazine. So that's my position on her comment.
Nah, fair enough. All right, let's go ahead and get into the actual dialogue that I brought you here, because we asked a question today, if you will, for the discussion today. We asked the question, Pan-Africanist movements, are they still viable for today, per se, right? And so I wanted to bring in a good friend of mine, comment. He was able to be on the show today, and so I wanted to read this comment. You know Supreme Ra, right, from RBG?
Yeah, big up to Supreme.
Yep, no doubt. So I just wanted to minimum share his comments, and we've got a lot of comments come as well. So we'll definitely pay attention to y'all in the chat and get y'all comments up here on it as well. Just to kind of give y'all a heads up. If y'all make some comments, we'll get them on the show. But let me read this comment from Brother Supreme, and this is the conversation I actually wanted to have. Again, I was just using the Yvette convo just to get this thing started, but this is the conversation we're having today. He says, I speak the people's language. With that being said, it's a showdown that's being brewing in the Black conscious ranks about Pan-Africanism and foundational Black American stuff, or whatever you want to call it. I feel like it is a very important topic that needs to be hashed out at this pivotal stage in our journey as kidnapped people. Now, I'm not one of those deniers of my African heritage and ancestors, but I am an embracer of my unique African American experience and culture. I feel like Pan-Africanists get real bitchy and defensive when being questioned about the goals and effectiveness of this movement or idea in 2025. I also feel like some FBA, Foundational Black Americans, people are sincere in their approach and understand, but most are misinformed, self-hating coons. Me personally, I fall in the middle. I describe myself as an African-American nigga, and I know how it sounds, but I'm honest, unlike some of y'all living in a fantasy world, but that's another subject for another time. I will end this by telling my staunch Pan-Africanist brothers and sisters that it is okay to adapt, regroup, rethink, and plot a different course. Don't wait to pivot, or you will find yourself playing the violin on a sinking Titanic. Now, for my FBA brothers and sisters, it's okay to come with new ideas and different points of view without acting like some hoes by cutting off your divine bloodline. I hope I brought some clarity to the subject, and if I offended someone, so. That's absolutely who Supreme Ra is, but I think it's a great opportunity to dialogue into the viability of Pan-African movements as it relates to American Descendants of Slaves or Foundational Black Americans, whichever one you choose. Brother Uncle, I'll start with you, just hearing that for the first time. What stands out to you?
That he's not, first of all, that's Supreme 101, right? And he's basically saying that both sides need to recalibrate at times. And he's saying that if the people in the diaspora that's fighting against this particular movement, they're gonna find themselves they sinking. That's not gonna be able to. That's not gonna fly. Yeah, and just from a business aspect, that's not gonna be able to fly. Just from business, like nobody's paying people who they can't verify that was not the descendants of slaves in America. So that's, we can just see that. So that's guaranteed that. But he also says, kind of like, we should not disconnect ourselves from the continent of Africa. And I agree with that 100%. And that's my calling card that is in my understanding, that we should always recognize where we come from. You don't got to make it sacred. You don't got to make it divine. But it's important to recognize that it shows that you have broken through, right? That you're clear in understanding where your ancestors came from, at least fundamentally. You know what I'm saying? But I will say, as African Americans, we're a brand new ethnic group. It is what it is. We're not culturally indigenous Africans. We're culturally African Americans or Black Americans. We develop a system to fight against oppression. We develop a system for organizing around ideas. We have developed a system that helps us survive. Now, is it great at all times? No. But if you sit back on it, right, and take a real good look, I mean, we're positioned ourselves, all right, to move forward. Now there's a lot of ideas we don't even push no more, right? I'm saying in the intellects, the intelligent people, it's certain things we don't push anymore. And I think that's part of our growth and our development. But the minute you forget about where you came from, you will at least mentally return.
No, yeah, I'm with Supreme in the sense that he says he's in the middle. I would agree with that. I would say that's my positioning. Definitely never forgetting and having much respect for the ancestors, specifically those who were brought here on the Middle Passage. So yeah, having a level of reverence for that. When I was younger, Brother Chill, I'll come to you now. Definitely went through a stage of Pan-Africanism, saying, "Hey, all of us have to come together. That's the better way." And so one thing that I think that gets lost in this conversation, and again, I love what Supreme is saying. Hey, let's rethink, let's reshape. What does it look like? In a sense, I personally, I'll say this to you and I'll let you go, that the Pan-Africanist movement of all Africans under the diaspora coming together was something that I romanticized, if you will. And so when Supreme says, "Hey, what's the questions? What do we need to revamp? What does it look like now?" I'm a big believer in questioning everything anyway. I can tell you that I question damn near everything. And so, but when it comes specifically to this conversation, I think we do romanticize it from the standpoint that it could be less effective than we actually think it could be. Because here's a comment I always say: no race has ever come together to do anything. And that's something I've been landing the last 6 months. I've been really highlighting it, and I'll build on that. But I'll go ahead and get your thoughts on what Supreme had to say, and I'll build on that thought of no race has ever come together to do anything. But let me hear your thoughts before I build on
that. There is. I want to tap into one point. There's one of my favorite African Americans historically in the struggle that we face is Martin Delaney. And in his book, he writes a simple text, and he says that the colored people of today are not the colored people of half a century or quarter century ago. And it requires very different means and measures to satisfy their wants and demands. And what he's trying to explain in that is that we must always be ready to evolve our movements to reflect the needs of the day. And the needs of the day are not the needs of the 1900s or the 1960s or the 1980s. And what ends up happening is our movements tend to get stuck in a language that is no longer relevant for today's situation. And many people don't know that there's when we talk about Pan-African, most people refer to Pan-Africanism as Garveyism, which is the remnants of what Marcus Garvey done, the Back to Africa movement, etc. But there always was another thread in Pan-Africanism. The W.E.B. Du Bois and the Herbert Harrisons, who did not want Black Americans to give up their identity, but to use their position in America, along with those in the diaspora and on the continent, to improve the conditions of those who are oppressed. So when most people argue against Pan-Africanism, they're going to argue from a position of Garveyism,
right?
The Garveyites,
Right.
Not from the position of Hubert Harrison or W.E.B. Du Bois,
right?
And not knowing the distinctions,
right,
in their arguments misconform or at least misleads people in the conversation. In 1900, when they had the first Pan-African Conference, they were talking about scientific racism, lynching, and labor abuse. And they wanted to use a collective argument on why these things ought to be addressed. So the idea that we're talking about, going back to Africa, always been there, and I'm not going to deny that. But that's a later development that came in that may have misrepresented the total goal of what Pan-African is. So I don't disagree with him. I think he's on point with we need to reevaluate how both of us, those who are in Africa, the diaspora in America, and those on the continent, because we're no longer in the 1900s or the 1960s.
Yeah, I love how you bring up Hubert Harrison. He's the first Black Socrates that everybody know. I go by AKA Black Socrates myself. And so I love how you go to that foundation of the attention of Pan-African and Pan-African from a Hubert Harrison, W. Du Bois standpoint. Many people are not familiar with it from that perspective. So thank you for bringing that perspective, Chill, because I think that aspect aptly applies to the moment right now, because as you said, W. Du Bois' idea was definitely there was a clear distinction by that point, right? Where it's over 250 years here at this point, 300 years at this point, so there's a clear distinction. So W. Du Bois definitely understood to, as you said, for us as African Americans in a specific culture, not to lose sight of our own culture. However, the way the world was moving, saying, hey, here's how we can kind of benefit each other based on our different positioning. That's a very different thing than the way that Garvey, again, not taking any credit from him, we're just kind of making very specific distinctions of, whereas Garvey was more kind of focused on a self-esteem issue, which we had that issue as well. So again, we're not saying right or wrong, but this distinction makes a big difference. And to your point, Chill, when you bring that foundation to the table, I think it can help us have an understanding of today. So when you, to your point, when you understand that Du Bois and Hubert Harrison was more saying, hey, we have this distinct culture, we have this situation, how do we position ourselves to help the diaspora help one another in their distinction? That's what we kind of lose sight of in current times. That's the romanticization that I think does not serve us, when we kind of think of it as we're all the same, or we should be brothers and sisters simply because we're Black. Like, that's kind of how Pan-Africanism is looked at. When I first learned it, I learned it from the Garveyite way as well. And that's what I said, as I got older and more mature, I moved away from it because I didn't understand from my perspective how practical it could be. But to your point, when you go all the way back to Hubert Harrison, then that's where, in my opinion, it can apply to today. Because what gets lost, in my opinion, I'm about to play another cut here from Yvette, when you get into the ADOS versus the Pan-Africanism, I love what Yvette and Tone are doing with the ADOS movement, because they're more focused on the legal aspect of reparations inside the country. What I don't like, just as a critique, is there's the ego involved, and you're throwing shots back and forth from an ego standpoint, and misses. To me, I just wish they would stick to the messaging, because the messaging is saying, hey, we're taking a legal approach within this country in order to get reparations specifically from who colonized us in this country. And because they have the ego shots, I looked at their history, they miss that what they're saying is, if we're successful here, this is the blueprint all of you can use in your different areas, whether it's the African, that Black people in the Caribbeans. You can use this same print, this same blueprint within your country to go to your specific colonizers, right? Like, that's their real message. But because of the ego, now people are going back and forth, in my opinion, from an ego standpoint, and missing the actual practicality of them making the ADOS distinction. People are taking it as, oh, they're trying to separate from us as Africans. And the reality is, from a legal standpoint, it needs to be argued within the country based on the government itself. That's their real point. But now it's turned into a back and forth as if we dislike each other. And unfortunately, as I said, I'll say this one more time, I think Yvette plays into it with calling people stupid and things of that nature. People are not going to hear you when you start name calling. That's just, again, my personal critique, and not necessarily about her. But I think that we've lost sight of the real legal beauty of what they're doing with the ADOS movement. They always say it, but the name calling, it gets lost in that. Let me play this cut, and you're going to hear some.
Can I say something real quick, Martin?
Go ahead. Yeah, please. Go ahead and say something.
Quick. So, first of all, it's arrogancy on both sides. African Americans should not be in Africa telling them what they should do and what they government. They should either, offer advice or offer a hand. But you can't tell a whole group of people in their own country what the hell they should do. On the other side, just because there's a title Pan-Africanist and it brings us together aesthetically, okay, and we fall under that banner, doesn't mean that you can come to America and tell African Americans, which is their own group, right, what they should do and how they should do it. You should offer up advice. You should be there as support. You know, they even say lead, follow, get out the way. Either you with me or against me. So yeah, that back and forth is very. And then the new moves, the FBA added into the split, which is crazy by Tariq to do that. Mm-hmm. He did that for marketing purposes only, right? Business model, okay, and it split it away. So all that, it shows how we're not ready yet. That's what it is, because there can be a conversation about our reparations in America, then there can be another conversation of how to set that forth in other countries that was affected by colonialism. Like, it's the craziest thing ever. It's like we crabs in a barrel at this point. So yeah, I find that to be a high level ridiculous.
No, absolutely. Let me play this cut. We'll continue this conversation and get your thoughts as well, Chill. So here's another cut. Again, I think this makes this distinction. And in my opinion, we're having that conversation that Supreme said we need to have. I hope that's what we're doing today.
Nobody did that. Ain't nobody been around here judging her blackness. What we have judged is her lineage and her attachment to American DL, Descendants of Slaves. She has a Jamaican parent and an Indian parent, and neither of those parents is an American DOS, descendant of chattel slavery in this country. Not everywhere slavery. We know that was slavery in other parts of the world. But if you in the Caribbean or one of those places, if you in Haiti, then your issue, as we've said here many a times, is with the French. And if you ever get reparations from the French, I will clap, I will be happy, I will throw you a party, I will buy you a drink, baby. But I will not try to take your money. I will not try to eat that fruit, because I don't have no bones buried in Haiti. My bones is buried in here. I celebrate you, I will help you, but I understand that that is yours. And I think you understand that too. So the real issue is, just like I'm not Jamaican, just like I'm not Haitian, just like I'm not Eritrean, you are not American DOS. You are not, you do not have parents and grandparents who grew up on sharecropper farms who can trace their stuff back to slavery. You do not have that. So what that means is that you are not a part of this tribe. That don't mean you are not black. It means you are not a part of this tribe.
I love what she's saying there. Again, I don't like the fervor, the arrogance, because it helps, because she's exactly right. Yeah. And I'm not saying she can't be passionate, but just how it's done, it just adds to the issue. And again, I don't want to make this about Yvette. We're not going to do any more cuts from her, but I still love the information in what she's saying. It's, hey, if you get reparations, you can take this plan we're using here and get reparations. I'm all for that. What she's alluding to, just to be real clear, and Chill, I'll let you respond first. What she's alluding to when she says, if you get your reparations, I'll clap for you. I'll help you get it. I won't come take what's yours. It's kind of her response to when you try to keep it all together and people say we should all stick together and we shouldn't separate ourselves. What her and Tone are always fighting against is when Pan-Africans are saying, no, let's not separate. We need to be asking all of them for reparations to all of us. And all Tone and Yvette is saying, if you do that, one, you can't win. You can't make a sound legal argument to expand it to everybody got to give it to all of us. And in this situation, we're asking specifically to our government for what happened to the American descendant of slaves. So to put it all together, you're taking from us. So she's kind of referencing saying, hey, if you're successful to the person she's speaking to for getting it from the French, I don't want no parts, because that's not our plight. Our plight was here on this land. Our plight was not where you were at in the Caribbean. So she's absolutely right in how she's separating it. But I wanted to give a little context for why she, in my opinion, kind of took a shot. I don't want none of yours. Like, it's just said with so much fervence that people are going to miss the actual point, in my opinion. Go ahead, Chill. Your thoughts about what I think is a sound argument that her and Tone are making, not just simply about reparations, but understanding how this needs to be separate when it comes to reparations. It doesn't necessarily have to apply to all other things, but in this situation, I think it's a smart play. Your thoughts, Chill?
I think we need to use the terms that we use in sociology and science to explain what's going on, and it's called ethnogenesis. Ethnogenesis. It is the development or the stages of new ethnic groups. Mm-hmm. Why is that important? Because if you speak to them in a language that makes sense, a commonality, that's what makes science so powerful, is that the words tend to mean the same thing across cultures, right? So I would approach an African and
Right.
ask them where they from, and then ask them what group they belong to, what their ethnic group. None of them would say I'm from Africa in a sense of I'm no longer
Right.
Yoruba. I'm no longer Igbo, right? Go to the Caribbean, you wouldn't ask them and say you're no longer Jamaican, you're just African.
Right.
That's not a term that they would do. They would use that. They wouldn't feel comfortable about that. And then explain to them that that process to which you became Yoruba or Igbo or Jamaican is the process that we went through here to become African Americans. That though we all have similar roots, the branches of ethnicity has changed within each group dynamic, and there's slight differences between the cultures, and it's okay. And it doesn't mean that we cannot engage in global politics. It just means that we need to recognize the uniqueness and the beauty of each ethnic group equally. And that's very important, because when you look at the argument for reparations, there has to be a time that it starts. When was the offense? When did the offense happen? Right? What was the results of the offense? And then how do you repair the offense? And if you weren't part of the offense, then you shouldn't be part of the repairing, because you don't have the same damage. It doesn't mean that your experiences is less, though. So African Americans shouldn't be standing
I love
there.
it. And again, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. The phone, it cut off a little bit. Continue. I'm sorry.
Okay, I apologize. It's not saying that your experience with slavery, right, is somehow less than my experience with slavery. That's not what we're saying. We're saying it's different. And let me give you a personal testament to that. My family is originally from Berks County, Georgia. We're part of the Geechee people that started to spread out, right? My grandmother's father, I believe she was 9, died from an assault by a group of European men who did not like the fact that he had land. Him and his brother had land.
Wow.
They beat him, and 2 days later, he passed away. And it forced my grandmother, her brothers and sisters, and mother to flee Georgia and go to Harlem. That's an experience of numerous people here on the soils of America. Now, if I was to go to those same people who committed that act and demand reparations or justice, unless you're part of that group, descendants, my grandmom, excuse me, her brothers and sisters, et cetera, you would not be applied to that because it's a specific incident. And I think we can use those type of examples to explain the argument for reparations.
No, I love it. And the thing is, from the beginning, before it turned into a battle and people say, hey, they're trying to, Yvette and Tone are trying to separate us again. That's going back years now. But they literally was just saying that. I wish, Chill, that they would have kept your tone and your understanding of how to, in a sense, deliver their message and just kind of stayed in that vein so that people understand, no, this is for you too. We're not separating, but this is, like you just said, this is how you make this argument based on where you were colonized at, if you are in the diaspora because of the enslavement trade. That's simply all it's ever been, and that gets lost. Your thoughts, and I'm gonna play another cut after this.
It gets lost because let's look at it from Yvette's perspective. People are very, very mean. We bring forth scientific literacy as a tool to examine our cultural understanding and our history. It's a powerful tool, and also as a tool to understand the world. People fight against that right off the rip because there's a war raging, at least mentally, in the minds of African Americans, of diaspora Africans, against colonialism and Europeans. So if you mention something that they're not actually educated on, they're relegated to the white man this and the white man that, and they'll get very mean and say all types of things. Okay, so she's responding to the hate that she get. If we would all just sit down and listen to what she's saying, right? It makes sense, because when trying to accomplish something, I'm gonna give you an example. There was a thing called when Martin Luther King and them, they had a bigger goal, and the bigger goal was to get the rights that was afforded to us, our civil rights.
Mm-hmm.
But you couldn't just start right there. You had to start with, boycotting the buses. That was the small point.
Court cases at the lower level.
Court cases, right? All that, right? But you had to, before all of that, before you even get in the court, you had to make people recognize there was something they was fighting for, right? You had to get it to the news, showing white people just disrespect black people, made the world, now you can take it to court. That first domino fell. All she's trying to do is to get the first domino to fall. That's the only way anything gets taken care of on planet Earth, is you have to have a domino to fall, and then humans like, oh, I see how you did it, and you follow suit. But if you've beaten up the first domino for your own selfish reasons, it's craziness, man. She's just trying to make the domino fall, right? We can't see it, right? It's the first stages for all of us that have been oppressed. Like, and then you can say, well, of course if she's talking about colonialism, then she understand the statement that they said the sun never set on the British Empire.
Right.
What does that mean? Right? Fraught with racism, right? And so they would stand with her, in unison with her, if they understood that. But their own selfish thing, you leaving us out, no one's leaving you out. You know what I'm saying? We're saying from a business point of view, okay? From how law works, right? If us three can sit here on this panel and say, man, what if our old people, Africans, and different people in different places, billions of dollars, I'm sure as hell not going to pay everybody. I'm only going to pay the ones that can prove they was in a situation, right? With this particular country, it's called world commerce. So yeah, man, it's wild. So I get where she's at. It's so much hate that came at that woman. People separated the movement, man. Right now, she just on her toes.
I see what you're saying. The psychology. You're explaining to me. That makes sense. Yeah. Yeah, you break it down the psychology of why she's responding with the type of fervor that's not helpful, but it's because of the way that came at her from a lack of understanding. But to your point, if you haven't heard stuff yet, you're like you said, people are mean. I love how you're walking through that.
Yeah, I go through it all the time, Montoya. See, I can talk to you, I can talk to Chill, right? I can talk to the serial killers. It helped me deal with it. It helped me deal with people biases, confirmation bias, and what's the other thing, Montoya?
Cognitive dissonance.
Yeah, that's where it's at, bro. Mm-hmm. Right? We're gonna matter for Chill. You know, me, you, Montoya, we're gonna do a whole show on that, on those things right there, because that's what I struggle with, bro.
Let's do it.
I be like, they scamming, right? I be saying they scamming because they.
I'm always like, nah, man, that's a natural reaction. I'm always fighting you, saying, nah, they don't. There's no intention. That's just the cognitive dissonance. So we always had that battle. So let's definitely do that show. Yeah, let's do some more. Let's keep breaking down this history for people who may be hearing this understanding for the first time. Here's a good cut. I think that just kind of here's a piece of context that I wish all, in my opinion, Black people would learn and have, because one thing I hate, Brother Uncle, I'm kind of going in a slightly different direction, but it fits all in this puzzle. One thing I hate is when people say Africans sold Africans. And you've heard me go off on that. Oh, so here's a little cut that really breaks it down. I would say even better than I've ever broken it down, because I do not like that statement, Africans sold Africans. And again, it's just learning the history and understanding context a little better. So this is about a 3-minute cut for those that are watching, but I think it fits in today's conversation.
Slavery was a fact of life in much of sub-Saharan Africa in pre-colonial times, and not just the international trade to European or Arabic buyers either. Slavery was something that was also practiced intranationally throughout the continent, where African people were bought, sold, and captured within the continent of Africa itself. However, one important thing to note is that African people did not and still do not view themselves as one homogeneous ethnic group. What I mean by this is that contrary to the people of Africa, The cultural and ethnic identity that African Americans have is something that is based entirely on race. For example, if someone in the United States has the same physical features as an African, right away they are looked upon as an African American and are thus classified as belonging to the same ethnic group as those who share those features. Barack Obama is an excellent example. He is considered by most to be the first president of the United States belonging to the African American ethnic group, despite being born to a mother who was Caucasian. This mentality simply does not exist among African people. The criteria to fall within the same ethnic group as another person is significantly more precise and has little to nothing to do with skin color. As with all other human populations throughout Europe, Asia, Australia, and the Americas, Africans come from all walks of life, languages, cultures, and civilizations, and skin color has always had very little to do with their ethnic group. Simply put, being black was not, and still is not, the only criteria for being considered members of the same ethnic group among Africans. In pre-colonial times, it was common for African kingdoms to go to war with one another and sell all prisoners off into the transatlantic slave trade, such is the case with the Anglophone countries of the Caribbean, with populations that largely descend from Ashanti slaves. This is due to the fact that the Fanti, who were allies of the British, frequently went to war with the Ashanti and sold all of their captives to the British, whom were allied to the Fanti at the time. In fact, the spirit, skill, or organization of these warriors didn't just disappear after they became enslaved, as they were known for being among the most rebellious groups of slaves in the New World, leading highly organized and often successful rebellions against the British. So much so that the British would call them Coromantes to distinguish them from the typical docile slave, a keepsake from Fort Coromantine, where they were shipped from, to the point where a bill was even passed to ban their importation to the Caribbean due to their rebellious reputation. So simply put, if one was to consider this as selling their own people, then the entire history of the world should be rewritten. The oppression against Jews in World War II should be considered whites oppressing whites, despite the fact that we all know very clearly that rivalries between the two groups was more than just skin deep. Pun intended. There is also a common.
So, Chill, this is where, when I say the concept, I said it earlier in the show, no race has ever done anything, right? So I think that video specifically breaks down how the construct of race, everybody know we've learned, we didn't learn this 25, 30 years ago, but as we've gotten better with language, most people can rightfully say they understand that race is a construct, and that's just saying it, but understanding it is a deep dive, and this is an example of being able to do that, right? It's just understanding that we've been given the construct of race to where we've mistakenly over applied just the simple context of skin color, blackness alone, to say these are our brothers and sisters. But there's no point at any time in which any race has come together to do anything. And that video beautifully points out the realities of how we see Africans the way we do because of modern context and what happened through colonization. But Africans, like any other group around the world, never saw themselves as a race or that this is my brother, this was my enemy. And all groups have done that, like it pointed out at the end. If we just made it a context of race, we would just say, when the Jewish Holocaust, that whites are whites. Like that, I love the way that video pointed that out to kind of say, to get us out of that construct. So this is not me defending Africans when I say I hate the term Africans. So Africans, it's me understanding the reality of the different ethnic groups that all groups have, and never at one point has any race come together to do anything. I'll give an example, and Chill, you can jump in. The example I always give, even in this conversation about ADOS, like there's so many times throughout the history of this country alone, when those American Revolution started, the same British people that were responsible for, in a sense, enacting the transatlantic slave trade, they were the very ones saying, if you fight with us, we'll free you. just kind of pointing out that the Americans who now had separated themselves, them same white people, this is not defending anything. I'm just talking about facts. Those same white people now, the interest was different and they went against each other just about us. And again, I'm not giving nobody credit. I'm just talking about the reality of that. When we do use the construct of race, we'll just kind of say, look at what white people did. They colonized us, then they cut us as slaves. And we're like, no, if you look at the history, them white people was at it hard at one another about their quote unquote property. Chill, your thoughts about that video, because again, I think it's a distinction we need to better understand so that we don't lose sight of and overstate race like I think we currently do today.
Well, that's the dangers of using such a broad term, is that you take people out of their cultural continuity. You take them out of who they are when you use broad terms like that. And so we ought to use caution when we talk about that. One of the reasons why is because if you look at like the Haitian Revolution, right? You look at what happened. At times, people can adopt their oppressors' attitudes, right? I want to say it that way. So you look at the island of Haiti and Dominican Republic, right? One side Spanish, the other side French. So the Haitians now speak French more, have a blended type of Creole language. Dominican Republic speaks Spanish. But when you go back to the war, you realize that the Haitians used the animosity between the French and the Spanish as a means for liberation. So recognizing the difference in those two European powers became advantageous to the liberation of Haiti, which then later led to the liberation of the Dominican Republic. So the Haitians, after a man in America swindled them out of money for guns, went to the Spanish and had the Spanish help them fight off the French, and then turned around and fought the Spanish out the rest of the island, which was a militarily ingenious move. But you're able to do that when you recognize the distinctions. They didn't just say all white people. And then you go look at their what's really funny, you go look at their constitution. I think it's the 1803 or the 1807 one, where they actually adopt certain Europeans and said, since y'all helped us, we're going to consider you black too. So the fluidness of politics, it's a necessity to see people as who they are and not use these broad terms, because it becomes, one, disingenuous to history, and two, leads to animosity. I wouldn't want somebody to because they look at me and I have locks, assume I'm from Jamaica. Jamaicans don't own locks, right? There's a whole nother cultural continuity on why I may want to wear my hair like that. Or it could just be stylish, nevertheless. But recognizing that the Ashanti is a ethnic group of people who engaged in different types of politics, who were imperialist in some degree and expansion, and took prisoners of war and removed them from the continent. True. And it doesn't minimize that there were some groups or some people who actively engaged in the slave trade for money. And a lot of people in America frown their nose at that, but then, their grandsons and their sons, and they sell drugs for money. So, there's a lot of things people do for economic gain that they probably wouldn't do if they had other means to do it. Some people do it because that's what they do. But we can't live in a place where we could just say all Africa sold slaves, or all Europeans were slave traders. You know what I mean? Matter of fact, if you call a Russian a Caucasian, he's going to want to kill you. That's an offensive term to Russia. So understanding that can lead to better conversation.
Well, it's speaking to reality. And I'm going to let you jump in here. I got a comment here just to kind of dialogue. One of the comments says, this is not true. This is not true. In fact, it is known fact that Pan-Europeans stick together when it comes to conquering goals. And we can simply say we speak English because the French and British were in battle for this area. The British won out. We may have spoken French because they were real. Those were real, actual wars. The French actually allied with the Native Americans to attempt to push out the British. Again, this is not on a side. This is just speaking the real facts and understanding how race that we now identify with so hard is really a new human phenomenon. If you're going to put it in actual perspectives and realize that all these things that Brother Chill is talking about is the reality of how people see themselves. So yeah, like you said, you're just speaking the facts when you say the Ashanti were, known traffickers of other Africans, right? When we use the context of Africans, but we just kind of see it in the face of race. But at the end of the day, we're just really talking about, and this is what we miss most. And the uncles heard me say this a million times, what we miss by allowing the construct of race to lead the way that we've been taught to use it. We actually just don't realize that every group has done everything to one another because that's the human experience. That's why you have one group that is imperialistic versus another group, but you won't go on no continent and not see within that continent the same issues we're talking about right now. We've just been taught to see it only through the lens of race. But at any given time, interest for one group can switch and change, like Chill gave that very same example. Teamed up with one group and then push that other group right back out, the one guy he was speaking of. That's what humans do. And when you put it in human context, you won't let race create the animosity that we see in the ADOS versus the Pan-African movement. That wouldn't even exist if we didn't over-identify with race in the way that we do. Go ahead, brother.
So at times, separation is very important for developing cultural identity and shared experiences. And if I just would give an example of this, say the Nile Rally, it's 1,400 miles long. And so the peoples that are in Africa can be closely related to people that's in the Middle East, right? Based off of proximity, right? And then the people in the South can be closely related to people in the South, right? Because of proximity, right? But there's distinctions. There's a distinction between Northern Nile Valley culture, Middle Eastern culture, and Southern Nubian culture and Egyptian culture, right? You would never say that they all want anything. It doesn't make sense in the grand scheme of things. The Egyptians were distinct in what they was talking about. But when you go study them and you look at the culture, right, you would say, man, they really, man, what is this, right? But in actuality, they had their own thing. This is what humans do, right? It's not a problem to say we're African Americans or Black Americans, right? And you are such and such African or Ghanaian, right? That it's not a problem. It's not. And so we need to recognize that, right? I think it's fool's gold to act like the Africans enslaved themselves. Man, it's a Christian trick at the end of the day. It makes you hate the things that you came from and the system that you developed. How they didn't have a system to stop them from enslaving themselves, right? Think about that, right? But in actuality, that's not how they viewed it. On the ground, they viewed we are such and such. This is such and such, right? And this is how it is. Like you said about America, it's very clear that these are the French, the British, they're all Germanic tribes. They're genetically related to each other, but they're distinct ethnic groups, man. And I'm saying, no, nothing wrong with that. That's exactly what humans do.
Now, fair enough. We got ATL boy 0217 dogging us out, which is fair.
Let me say.
Again, we welcome all comments on Mental Dialogue. He said, you smart niggas live in a delusion, non-race mattering, made-up world. You lame smart niggas hiding sources. That fuck you don't think race matters. You a dummy. We're not saying race doesn't matter, but I respect the thoughts. And again, if you know mental dialogue, we welcome it all. So thank you for the thoughts, brother. We're not saying that race doesn't matter. We are trying to put race in context that it is more modern. And if you overplay race, you will miss and start having, I'll say my African brother sold me, but if I were to go actually witness that actual history, them two groups never liked each other. So is that how are you selling your brother when you don't fuck with each other? Like it's not even a proper context for the realities of what happens based on people drawing their lines and deciding my culture is this and I've othered this other culture for whatever reason. It can be for valid reasons, it can be for BS reasons, but to think that they're brothers when they've never seen themselves as that, and now 400, 500 years later, I look at their times and say, look at what they did to each other. And you didn't know they never fuck with each other. Like I don't want to get kicked off YouTube because I keep cursing, but I'm
No, you're all right. They ain't gonna get you.
Just so let me again, I respect your thoughts, but that's my response to you, ATO boy. Go ahead.
So let me take a deep breath and respond. I think you misunderstood what we're saying in that context. So there's something called the Thomas theorem. It's a sociological term that they refer to a phenomenon that happens where subjective attitudes, you could say, become objective consequences. It's like if men define something as real, the consequences are real. So when we say that race is a social construct, that doesn't mean that it doesn't have consequences in the actions of that. That's not what it means. It just means that it's a creation out of man's imagination. It's not objective, but the consequences can still have effects on your everyday life, and that's called the Thomas theorem. But in order for you to hold a conversation, you cannot.
I love you explaining that because I have a book called Re-Education.
Go ahead, sir.
Right. No, I love it. I have my book Re-Education of the Negro, and I point out, I explain the construct and say, but you can have real life or death consequences, and as a Black African American, still to this day, real life and death consequences, even though this is a construct. So I didn't know the name of the theorem, so thank you for that. Chill. Mm-hmm. Let's go to another video. We got a couple more videos and we're gonna get out of here.
Hold on. Go ahead. No, so I took a note.
Please,
so if we don't recognize the boundaries that are created by ethnicity and try to divide us into races, we will find ourselves with a contradiction. We will start to contradict ourselves. For instance, the Africans was the greatest in the world. We had a moral character that was above and beyond everything. And then you enslaved yourself. See that contradiction right there?
No, it's impossible.
It's impossible. And it does not allow you to understand the indigenous cultures that you came from. I'm gonna say this again, not making those ethnic distinctions, right? And not allowing a nation to be a nation. It takes away from the actual African agency that occurred in said place. You can never understand an indigenous culture by saying these are North Americans, right? You could never understand the different groups that made up in the Amazon, the different things that they brought to humanity. You could never understand it. It make you sound stupid at the end of the day. I'm gonna end with that. Hey,
good stuff. Let's go to
Montoya. You know what you could do?
Yes.
You could have a caller, let him say his piece, and put him down and get another person. You could actually add that to the thing. That'd be serious.
Yeah. Matter of fact, let's definitely make sure I start doing that going forward. Yeah. We are, I don't want to do the whole 2-hour show, but we got a couple more clips here. Yeah, and so I want to play this cut. I think this cut right here is now you're looking at I think this may be this is something that happened on the African continent, so maybe some type of meeting here. I don't know the context of it in that sense, but I think it's going to point out exactly what you just talked about, if you will.
We don't know who we are as Africans because we are mixed. How are we going to reclaim ourselves? How are we going to get back the dignity we must have as Africans? It's indeed very difficult. We think, or I think, and Basotho think, everything that was taken from them must be given back to them.
You cannot talk about the colonial injustices on human rights abuse when our governments currently continue abusing the rights of the people they lead. Mr. President, this is, as you speak about the colonial injustice, AU must be in a position to correct the current human rights injustices going on. We have a problem in Africa that many African countries, many African leaders don't want to hear people opposing them. They end up abducting the people opposing them. They end up throwing them in prison. They end up killing them. All this is going on the continent. Now, you cannot have the moral authority to demand reparation, colonial injustices in human rights when you are abusing the rights of your people.
Organizations. In the context of this panel, I would like to.
So that is an example. I hadn't seen that until getting ready for this show, but I'm watching, if you will, again, that group of, I'll just say Africans, because I don't have the context of exactly where they're at and where they're from, but you see, one arguing for reparations, right? And then the other one saying, hey, until we got to talk about what the current governments are doing and how they're currently oppressing one another before we can have the moral authority to ask, the European colonies for money, if you will. It's the same back and forth here in America where you'll see the politics of the left, the Democrats versus the Republicans when we talk reparations here. Now, they use different terminology, but you have a lot of, if you will, people on the left or Democrats who are for reparations, and you'll see African-American Republicans denouncing it for other reasons. The reason I say that cut highlights what you just talked about contradictory-wise, is really, if you, again, get out of the context of race, what they, even though they, in my opinion, not aware of this, but you just saw the realities of what humans do. What humans do, meaning, I think the second guy is wrong. Hey, you can go get your reparations for the damage that was done historically. That shit was still done, right? Mm-hmm. So I think he's wrong in that sense, but he took it to a moral place, this big group context, to say, hey, we don't even have the moral authority to ask because of what people are currently doing. No, you can still get it because of what was done, but the point of what people are currently doing, the reality is all groups have done everything to one another, period, point blanks. That's what humans have done and will continue to do. That's not me justifying any type of oppression from any group, but if you really go study the history of any geographic area, any ethnic group, everything that we say another group done to another, those groups have done it to themselves. That's without fail in human history, but you have to get away from the construct to be able to say what I'm saying right now. Go ahead, brother.
Let me, first of all, big up to this channel. You have a donation from the community.
Thank you.
That's Brother Brass, a Tri-Media, man. So he actually donated for the greater community of a whole. Okay, so you guys send me a Cash App so I can see that favorable donation there, brother. I know you'll take it and put it to good use. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, but that's the point. That's the point I was making. I was always making the point that as soon as you try to make it all one thing, exactly, right, then you end up beating up your own damn thing. You know what I'm saying? And you can see that she was talking about the Africans on a whole and how more they was. He come right in like, wait a minute, we gotta fix our own thing. It's the wildest thing ever. It's an unnecessary back and forth. And as a matter of fact, it actually shows that we're in a stage of growing, right? We're not there yet. That's that's that type of conversation that you have when we're just not there yet. The fact that they would fight with Cornell and them shows that we're not there yet. There's a certain process that has to occur. We have the models already. We have 350,000 years of Homo sapiens sapien history that shows that, man, we're gonna split, we're gonna develop different groups. That's what we do. We find right things. It's no getting away from that. You know what I'm saying? Chill is a pseudo killer. Why? Right? Why is he a pseudo killer instead of this, instead of that? There's reasons behind that, right? It's our job to understand we could always work together, right? But there's going to be a distinction there. And each group can have their own idea to attack the problem. Like I like Burkina Faso right now. I enjoy what I see that president is doing right now in Africa, right? We sitting here saying, that's some simple things to do. Just put their ass out, right? If they don't protect they population and just want to protect their business, put them out. We want a better business deal. We sitting here forever saying that's simple, but it's not. It's based off where we fall on the scale of our development because we went through colonialism, bro.
I love that example. I was going to speak to it, and you didn't walk me right into it. So watch this right here, brother. I'm finna break this down to the very last compound right now. So you're talking about Captain Ibrahim Traore in Burkina Faso, right? Let's just talk about what's actually happening. So when you use the overall context of race in an improper manner, what happens is we look at what he's doing and says, man, look at what he's doing. Big up to him. And I'm not disagreeing with that big up, right? I'm not disagreeing with it, but you can be more accurate when you don't apply the context. Accurate meaning this. So while us in the African American, we've talked about him on this show, so I've done some research here to what I'm saying. But for those that are, if you will, bigging up Traore, in reality, and when I say in reality, I'm not saying this is a negative. I'm just speaking the facts. In reality, the ASE, which I forget exactly what it stands for, but it's Burkina Faso and 2 other countries, they actually broke away, I think, from the African Union. Don't quote me on if it's African Union, but a larger group of Africans, I think it was the African Union, to do what they're doing. It highlights exactly what you've been talking about, Unc. So they've decided for their own benefit that instead of being a part of the whole African Union, again, it may not be African Union, but one of the larger groups, I may have that part wrong, but they've decided for them to build the way they want to build, they've actually separated, where again, if you think about what Pan-African has always preached, we're looking at it on the outside as Americans saying, yeah, we need to follow what he's doing, not realizing he's actually broke away from the bigger union to be able to, in his opinion, do more of what he's doing. Here's another reality. The French was who colonized them. They're making great deals with Russia, great deals with China. And so we, in the context of race, you've heard me talk about this before, in the context of race, we always assume a deal with another race is to our disadvantage.
Yeah, crazy.
Like we don't give, like, because of, but again, this is not blaming us for doing it. It's because of how we've been taught history and how we've been taught race in our own experience. In our own experience, when we, in a sense, think of a deal with white people, we just assume to be exploited. But the reality of history is part of the reasons we are free and our ancestors got us to where we could be on this internet doing what we're doing is because they made alliances with other white people in order to free our ancestors. Like, because again, we're getting back to what humans do. So if you only hear it in the context of race, you think I just gave some white people credit. I didn't. We talked about the reality of what groups and humans do. Brother Traore is a perfect example of what humans do. He broke away from the greater to be able to accomplish, and in his opinion, he's getting better deals from the Russians than he was ever going to get from the French. But we will say in the context of race, oh, we're having our own. Well, when it comes to world politics and geopolitics, every group partners somewhere. We assume that the Chinese are taking advantage of the Africans in the country that they're in. No, the Chinese have a need. There is a value exchange that is happening, and we should never assume that one group is advantaging the other. You can't assume it. You have to actually know the deal and find out if something is exploited. But we will make an assumption that it's exploitive when another race is a part of it and not give credit to our own African brothers and sisters who I still see as such because of our ancestry, ability to say, hey, what? I don't like this deal, but I'll make this deal. And that's actually on equal footing. But the psychology of race makes us assume that the other group is being exploitive. How we don't know that Brother Traore's deals are exploitive of the Russians. It's quite possible. And I'm not saying I know one way or the other, but it's just trying to dialogue about how to have proper context about what we see. And the blunt object of using race as everything will actually make you miss what's actually happening. I hope that point makes sense. Brother Uncle Chill, you can kind of jump in on that if you like. And I'll play one more cut. We're going to get out of here.
Yeah, what we're really discussing is African agency, right? And sometimes it is frustrating when in our ignorance we engage in behavior that white supremacists has indoctrinated in the world, and that is to take agency out of people. Slavery took the agency out of Africans that were brought here, right? We no longer had control over our bodies. Taisi Coates and the world between between me and the world or something, or the world and me in between, something like that. He talks about black bodies, right? He talks about how black bodies between the world and me. He talks about black bodies and how they've been objectified or minimized from their agency. And when we look at the African continent and we make these broad stroke assumptions, I don't believe Africans are ignorant to their own problems. I don't think they need us to explain this is your issue, right? I think they need us to support them as they grow, just like we need their support as we grow and as we begin to try to redefine our own personal agencies. And so we can misunderstand that. So in Africa, you have a lot of different ideologies, political systems that are developing. I like the 3-state solution with the Sahel states. I'm not against that at all. I think that France controlling your currency the way they had it set up, you could never actually develop. And if you got 90% of your liquid cash held in francs in France, that's problematic for development. And so those in the Sahel who have been facing Islamic extremism took steps to protect themselves, which I think is brilliant. And at the same time, I am thrilled that other African nations, while they complained and made efforts, didn't physically get involved in that incident, which we have seen continuously happen on the continent of Africa. I go back to that interview with Nick Fuentes and Candace Owens. I think if you had time, you should listen to what Nick Fuentes is saying about Black people. And I think the progress that we see across the globe, you look at the Caribbean and their reparation movements and their arguments within the United Nations. Listen to Africa, who's saying, listen, we understand the United Nations Criminal Court, but we're not going to be the only people who are going to be penalized under that agency. And if you can arrest people across the globe who've engaged in war crimes, and you're not going to keep locking us up. You look at these moves and you can see a breath of fresh air. A breath of fresh air. And that breath of fresh air is Africa, Africans in diaspora, and Africans in America demanding full agency over their political thoughts, over their actions, and their ability to provide and move forward, progress in a modern world.
No, I love it. I would just say the smartest way of everything that we've said and what you're saying, Chill, the smartest thing is just to simply understand that the distinction is more normal than the fantasy of we should all be aligned because of we look alike and because of race. And I'm not saying it to be against it. It just doesn't make sense when you misunderstand the construct. I'll give one more example and play one last video, and we'll get out of here.
And then I want to.
But just another example whether you go ahead, brother.
So
did you want to say something?
Yeah, I wanted to speak to that last point that we brought up about the president in Burkina Faso. And so most of us aren't even familiar with the Religious Society of Friends. In case you don't know what the Religious Society of Friends are, it was actually the Quakers. They played a crucial role in the early development of the Underground Railroad. And imagine if those enslaved people would say, I ain't mess with them white people because they white. Where will we be? So the question is asked, without the Quakers, where would the enslaved Africans be? A bunch of niggas standing outside. Craziest thing ever. You needed their homes. You needed them to hide you, right? You just needed them. So it's not true. See, when you're in dire straits, all of a sudden color disappears. Take it from me, right? I was in the Marine Corps. When you're in that foxhole, right? When you training and you hot and thirsty, you pass that daggone water around. I'm not drinking ever, hear me white. You might say it in the first hour, you might say it in the second hour, but by the time that damn third hour comes, thirst overcomes you, right? And so thirst has overcome us in Africa, and we're starting to think, right? Like it's actually a colonial trick, race is, because they created in the 1700s. Where they marginalize you. And as long as you use that tactic to fight them back, you won't even be able to see the daggone Quakers. You won't be able to see the other deal with the Russians. You won't be able to see none of this. You stay stuck, right? In a badass deal. I'm going to end it right there.
No, I love it. Great example, brother. And the example I would like to give, again, I am for reparations. Again, I'm not telling anybody watching here.
I'm for reparations too.
Whether you should or should not be against it. But again, just to give context, I had a meeting this week with a couple of brothers who were making some big moves here in Atlanta. And we were talking about reparations, for example. And I'm familiar with here in the United States specifically, about a little over 70% of Americans are against the concept of reparations for African Americans specifically, right? Just as an overall. And the brothers shared with me that there was a poll I wasn't familiar with that about 70% of African Americans are for it or whatever. And so when we were having a dialogue, he highlighted to me, he says he thought the most important when he was giving up, and I was like, well, thank you for giving me this, additional information. I didn't know about the one specifically for us. And he highlighted to me, he was saying that he thought the effort had to be that we needed to be 100%, that African Americans need to be 100% for it as what would move the needle. Mm-hmm. I remember saying back to him, I didn't think that was realistic to have 100%, and that the bigger issue is how to play long term to get that 72% down, because at the end of the day, that's the majority of Americans. So that was kind of like the dialogue we had, and he had said to me, kind of as an aside, in addition to that, and he and I didn't get to go back and forth about this, but he highlighted that when the Japanese who went through the internment camps that they went through during World War II here in America, that when they actually got their reparations, I think in the 80s or whatever, that they had 100%. He highlighted to me that 100% of them were for it. They didn't have Japanese who were for it or against it, like you see with the dialogue I played earlier or here in America. He's like, they were 100% for it. So I know he was using that example, and I was trying to have smart dialogues. He was using that example to kind of say, hey, them being 100% for it, he felt like that would be the thing that would be necessary first for us as Black Americans. Now let's put it in the context of the conversation we're having today. That the Japanese internment camps was just 40 years before that, the actual people that were harmed could easily be highlighted. The records could be kept up with. And so even Japanese Americans who may not have experienced that or not even been in that group, they still obviously lined up with their fellow Japanese Americans. But what what it wasn't? It wasn't all Asians that lined up for Japanese to get that. Like, I'm just trying to show the context of how broad race can be, right? So that specific Japanese ethnic group, who are they're actually 7% of all Asians here in America. Right, currently right now is 1.5 million Japanese in the country. Back in the 80s, it wouldn't even have been that many. So one, you don't even have the number of people that you would have when you conclude all foundational Black Americans, if you want to use that term. You don't even have the number to do so, but you also got the buy-in of an ethnic cultural group. I'm using that example to highlight the importance and the understanding of how humans by nature identify more with their ethnicity and their actual culture than some concept of magically believing you could get 100% of African Americans, or my bigger point, that is even necessary in order to get reparations. The legal argument that Yvette and Tone are making is one and enough in itself, but you will have to attack that majority number more so than us having to line up 100% as Black. One, again, I don't think is realistic. And again, I'm just saying this again, just to reiterate it, the Japanese example, the equivalent would be all Asians lining up to get Japanese their reparations. That's what you're asking us as Black Americans to do. And I'm not trying to be right or wrong. It's just about having smart conversations and starting the dialogue, in my opinion, smartly about what race is and what it isn't. Any thoughts from either of you? This last video is just something I'm going to end the conversation with. Y'all can stay on and respond if you want to, but you don't have to. But any thoughts about what I said? And before we play this last one, tell them how to follow all the work that y'all are doing over at the Pseudo Killers as well. But give some comments and then close with how they can follow you as well.
So yeah, make sure y'all like and support this show, Mental Dialogue, and be aware of a show we're going to do on cognitive dissonance and the other biases that we have. I think it would help you see the picture real, from a bird's eye view, to really see the overall scheme of how we think. Broader, the overall broader picture of why we think the way we think and why we believe how we believe. It's essential to this whole conversation, whether you know it or not, right? We caught up in our biases and beliefs, right? And make sure y'all join, like, and subscribe to Pseudo Killers. Join our server. Somebody dropped the link in there. And man, we appreciate the Pseudo Killers, Community Skeptics, man, and Mental Dialogue, man. We just we having that conversation, that uncomfortable conversations, man.
No, that's what we do. Thank you, Chill, man. You brought a lot of insight to today's conversation. Any final thoughts, or any way, if you want to let people know how to follow you, do that as well. And then I'm going to close with, again, this other cut that y'all can stay on and talk about briefly if you want, or you can shut it down. It's really just something to have all of us think. So we don't have to have a really lot of response. It just gives more of this things to think about. So, yep, your final thoughts, brother.
Yeah, I think it was a great conversation. I appreciate you opening the platform. I'm grateful for that. Shout out for Ankh sending the link. I think it was a beautiful conversation. I think dealing with the cognitive dissonance and biases would be nice. And you can follow me, on a Pseudo Killer, because that's where I'm at. I'm just a Pseudo Killer. I don't do nothing outside of that, nor have intentions to. So that's it.
Nah, good stuff. All right, yeah. If y'all choose to hang on, it's up to y'all. This is actually a 6-minute clip. It's longer, but it's so just poignant to keep thinking through this thing we call race and these quote unquote differences between us Caribbeans and African brothers and sisters. So I love this.
Black Africans and Black Caribbeans and Black Americans are different. Black Africans and Black Caribbeans are closer, almost identical. They have high, and I'm generalizing now, but generalization is pretty accurate. They have high self-esteem and lower levels of confidence. Black Americans have higher levels of confidence and lower levels of self-esteem. because if slavery lasted here longer, it was turned into a business, and it was an intentional desire to destroy your spirit, because if they had this black man here, coming here with all that build and all that brawn from, by the way, they say they went to Africa, oh, we're dumb, we're stupid. Knock that off. 1600s, 1500s was an agricultural age. The wealthiest gold in America, in the world, were cotton crops and sugar crops and tobacco crops, which are in areas which were very humid, very hot, and the soil was almost dead. Who could master dead soil? Africans. So they went halfway around the world to find the geniuses of the soil. They brought us halfway around the world because we could build wealth for them and income. But they didn't need this brother's attitude. They needed his body. So they separated from his family, so he had no hope. They abused his wife and held him down so he couldn't protect her until he gave up his self-esteem. Now he's just machinery. So now, 400 years later, we never healed. So if I don't like me, I'm not going to like you. If I don't feel good about me, I'm not going to feel good about you. If I don't respect me, don't expect me to respect you. If I don't love me, I don't have a clue how to love you. And here's the big one. If I don't have a purpose in my life, I'm going to make your life a living hell. Whatever goes around, comes around. So we have high confidence, Jerome, because we've competed and succeeded against all odds in the biggest economy on the planet. So we have high confidence because we're competent, but we have low self-esteem, which is why you have crab in the barrel. It's why somebody's sitting there going, what is he talking about? My life? Why would anybody have anything with something positive to say right now? So if you got a problem with me, you need to check yourself. I don't even know you. So, as Quincy Jones once said, not 1 ounce of my self-esteem depends on your acceptance of me. So it's okay if you don't like me, I like me. Now, black African, y'all, come on now, we having church in here. Now, black Africans and Caribbeans experienced slavery lower for a shorter period of time, and they experienced family structure and role modeling for a longer period of time. The mayor was black. The governor was black. The premier was black. The dentist was black. The barber was black. The thief was black. Everybody was black. Together families. So they have higher self-esteem. But they have lower confidence because they didn't succeed in a market economy. It makes perfect sense. So that's why when black Africans or Caribbeans come here, within 2 or 3 years, they're killing it. Yet the Ethiopians in Washington, D.C., they're at the Park Hyatt parking the cars. Within a couple of days, they've hired the buddies to be valets. Within a few weeks, they're also the taxi drivers. Within a couple months, they put the money in for an Uber car. Now they got a black car. Now they got 3 black cars. Now they live together. Now they have their entire staff in the front of the lobby. They have the valets. They got the taxi. They got the Ubers. They're willing to rent you an apartment if you want one. I mean, but that's because the hustle was the only ingredient that they missed, the opportunity. Black people, black Americans are the role models for the world. But we've got a little bit confused because we think that's enough. We're also depressed. I think that 70% of black Americans clinically undiagnosed depressed. And I can't prove that number. I love number. I can't prove that one. But whenever I talk to somebody, our people in a real conversation, can I get an amen? So when we're having a real conversation, we just have to heal so we can deal. Now, if we can heal, which is real wealth, and heal ourselves and love ourselves, now we can have a relationship. Now, in a relationship, it's the only time where it should be multiplication and not math. So if a relationship, if 2 + 2 does not equal 6, 8, or 10, what are you doing? If you're not better together, what are you doing? When you go to the club tonight, what's tonight? Tonight's Saturday. When you go to the club tonight, what's tonight? Right. Entrepreneurs, we work 18 hours, they keep getting a job. we can work 18 hours and we have a nap for 3 hours, for 6 hours. That's it. So yeah, I don't know what day it is. You go to the club tonight? Oh man, she's fine. Oh, he's so handsome. What's your name? Oh, what's your credit score? And I'm only partially joking. After the looks fall away and the body falls away, that's your business partner for life. 2 plus 2 should equal 6, 8, or 10. If you're not better together, what are you doing? So this thing we're talking about is about self-esteem is the entire ball game. If we can't fix this, we're done. No one else can hurt us, will hurt us. If we can fix this, I believe we will and we are. No one can stop us.
I love that comment from John Hope Bryant. Mental dialogue, I always say the answer is in the name itself. If we can improve the conversation you have inside your own mind, you will be better. Therefore, the community is better. And we got our boy ATL, boy 0217 still dogging us out. Again, doesn't bother me at all. He says, I'm the widow for thinking smart black men sitting on YouTube talking to 10 people is world changing. I'll just simply say this is not all we do, brother. This is actually an extension to what's actually getting done in the community. But again, respect the thought.
I'll tell you why he on
from
YouTube looking.
But at the end of the day, man, I just wanted to let people.
Right?
I don't need to take that shot because I don't receive it that way. It don't bother
but
me
he's
at all.
here with us. Like it's that same conversation we talked about. You're here on YouTube looking at the very comment you just said. Wow, man. I love my people, man.
Hey, it's all good. But the bigger thing is I just wanted to close with that because I think he just put a lot of things in context of some of those differences and why they exist and the things that we see. And at the end of the day, if we, in my opinion, don't necessarily, again, respect the differences, but understand them and be able to work together while accepting them versus a romanticized idea that we should just be connected because we look alike. No, understand those differences. Like you said, the example he gave, learn how to work with those brothers who are building, you know what I'm saying, versus seeing each other as we're different. Like there's a lot of animosity that exists because we misunderstand this construct of race that was given to us. Never lose sight of that. So that's my final thought about why I played that cut. Either one of you brothers want to make a comment on that, you can. Other than that, we out of here.
No, I'm good.
All right, good stuff, man. We'll pop up on y'all in a couple weeks. Please go subscribe to the channel, which you're about to see that right here. You guys stay on for stay on after I end the stream. Y'all stay on in the back real quick if you don't mind.